Well, hello. I want to start this video with a question. How often have you said to yourself, well, I guess that's just the way it is? Think about life, about relationships, about whatever, even when you wish it was different. That's exactly what I'm going to be handling today in this episode of the Terri Cole Show. So I'm going to invite you to question the status quo. I'm going to help you identify whether you're a rule follower or a rule breaker, and I'm going to give you some ideas for problem solving, expanding your mental boundaries so you can think outside the box. So if you're new to my channel, my name is Terri Cole. I'm a licensed psychotherapist, and I wrote a book called Boundary Boss that you can get at boundarybossbook.com. So I want to make sure that if you're not already subscribed to this channel, please subscribe right now. Just hit that little bell so that every time something new comes up, you do not miss a thing. I also love all of the comments that you guys leave. I just sit around and read them all the time. So I want to highlight one from Julian Nicholson, and it was in the episode, Do You Have a Mother Wound? And she says, Hey Terri, thank you no end for your kind, compassionate, but painfully truthful videos. While I was listening to you, I felt gratitude, but also a rage, and decided to share with you. But after finishing watching, I realized that you created a course. I did. That was exactly what I needed and searched for you. Now I'm taking it. I'm so excited. Thank you, Terri. So you are so welcome. And Julia, yes, this work is painful, not for the weak at heart, as I like to say, but good for you for doing it. So before we get started, make sure that you subscribe, hit the bell so you don't miss a thing. Now let's hit today's content. So I want to start with having you think about who's creating your reality. Who's creating your limitations in your life? I'll start with a quick story. When I was a talent agent in New York City and LA, I was running the New York office of a bicoastal talent agency, and I wanted to transition to become a psychotherapist. And there were so many people in the industry telling me, you can't do it that way. The way that my plan was, I was going to work part-time, continue to run the agency, go to grad school at NYU for the accelerated 16-month program, and then open up my own practice. And every person, there was almost no one who was supportive. They were like, you can't do that. No one has done that. There's no such thing as a part-time talent agent. I was like, kind of. What do you mean? Just because it hasn't been done yet doesn't mean that I can't do it, or just because you can't do it. I mean, I wasn't positive I'd be successful at doing it, but I also didn't love all the naysaying, and there were no good reasons. Listen, if somebody gives me a logical good reason why there's that limitation, and I understand it and it makes sense to me, then sure, I would go with that. That wasn't the case here. So I decided that I could do it, even if they couldn't do it, and that's exactly what I did. So I ran the agency part-time, mostly all remotely, during the entire time that I was in grad school, and I taught acting at NYU as well. So I figured it out because I needed to make money, even though I had worked for a long time. I made a lot of money. I hadn't really saved a lot of money. So anyway, my point is that was the first thing that came to mind when I was thinking about sharing this content with you today, that there are so many examples of people who I've interviewed for the Terri Cole Show who really talked about doing things their way. Another one that comes to mind is that I would have different actors come into NYU and talk about their experience. And Mike Myers, who at the time was on SNL and had created all of the movies, that he created after that. And he was talking about, he came out of a comedy background, and he talked about how he wanted to get into movies, but that he was kind of funny looking. These are his words, not mine. That he was funny, but that nobody thought of him as an actor or that he could act. So he decided that he would write his own script. And that first movie, I think, was called I Married an Axe Murderer, I think it was. And this was the beginning of him writing and producing movies that he would star in. So if he followed the rules would say, listen, you're not a leading man. You're funny, but you're not famous, and you're a stand-up comedy and you're like a sketch comedy guy, like we don't care. So he just decided to make his own rules and create his own opportunities. So that's kind of what we're talking about today. Another friend of mine, Tara Stiles, who created Strala Yoga, and she's got yoga studios all over the world, teaches people. She's so amazing. Oh my God, I love her. She's been on the show a bunch. She had a whole line of clothing, I think in 2014, and I still have the shirt that says, "Who makes the rules?" And I think to myself, in my life, kind of I do. And that may not have always been the case, but what is required to really break down and think about what are the rules, what are the limitations that you are creating in your own life, or that you are abiding by in your own life. And this has everything to do with mental boundaries, right? Today in this episode, I'm hoping to help you expand your mental boundaries, your idea of what's possible. Get creative, think outside the box. So let's start with, are you a rule follower or a rule breaker? Now, you know this. Rule followers love structure, right? Love documentation, are detailed, complete tasks as outlined, resist change, dislike vague policies, right? Insist the details be stated. That's a rule follower. Wants to know exactly the right thing, doesn't want to make a mistake. Rule breakers are more like creative thinkers. Keep in mind, when I'm talking about rules, I'm not talking about laws, right? You know this, right? I'm just talking about social norms and the way that we interact. So I want to make sure I'm clear that I'm not saying go out and break the law. Moving into creative thinkers are rule breakers, problem-solving skills. Again, outside of the box, right? Outside of the box thinking. Just because it hasn't been done this way before doesn't mean this isn't a better way to do it. Works okay in the gray areas of life, right? There's so much with rule followers. There's so much about black and white thinking and wanting to be sure this is the way it's going to go, or this is going to be the outcome of whatever the thing is, which we don't know. Creative thinkers can also appear sort of disrespectful, even if you're not being disrespectful, because for some people, if you are challenging the norms, people will say, "Who the hell do you think you are?" to challenge that. So my feeling is I would rather do things my way, as long as I'm on my side of the street, I'm not harming someone else. And if people have a problem with it, then that's their side of the street, right? That's not my side of the street. Rule breakers do not love restrictions, and especially restrictions they don't understand, that they think are just arbitrary. So those are the two differences. So in the little guide that I'm giving you, I'll give you some questions so that you can answer to figure out where do you fall, but you know it. You know it. I'm a rule breaker. My husband's a rule follower. And listen, nobody is just what I just read off, right? Nobody is just those things I just named. But there's also psychological, which I don't have time in this episode to get into. There's psychological reasons as to why we become one or the other. It's nature and nurture. It's personality and environment that we grew up in. But with Vic and I, if we're driving in the middle of the country and there's literally nobody anywhere, maybe I'll roll through a stop sign. Roll through. He will never do that. And he'll always say, "You need to stop fully at a stop sign, any stop sign, all the stop signs." I was like, okay, but even when there's not even any deer around, even when there's no people for thousands of miles, he's like, "Yeah." You know why? Because that's the rules. I'm like, okay. So I try to follow all the rules when I'm with him because I don't want to stress him out. But will I roll through a stop sign after I've looked both ways when he's not around? Maybe. I don't know. I mean, this is where we differ. But we don't have to be the same. I am mindful, though, of the way that he is, and I try not to do things that stress him out. And keep in mind, I'm not saying like I'm a law-breaking rebel. I'm not. I am an outside-the-box thinker, though, without a doubt. And I think that it's very healthy to question what are we subscribing to? Who are we allowing to make the rules in our life? And this goes for our reality as well. I could have believed all of those people, and I'm sure those people, when I was leaving entertainment, were giving me what they thought was their best advice, right? I don't think they were trying to steer me wrong, but I don't think that they were right. Well, I mean, it worked out for me. They weren't right when it came to me because I could do those things they said I couldn't do because I believed I could. But here's the thing with thinking outside the box. You also have to be willing to take responsibility for yourself, for what happens. Maybe it wouldn't work, and then I would pivot. If I couldn't have done that, if me running the talent agency part-time didn't work, I would know that. If things were slipping through, my grasp because I was too busy, I would have not been irresponsible. I would have pivoted, and then I would have given my notice sooner and whatever. So the whole thing, when you are thinking outside the box, more creative thinking, it isn't about being irresponsible. It's about being a little bit courageous. It's about saying, I'm going to give this a go. And hey, if I need to pivot, if I need to change my mind, that's why in the Boundary Boss Bill of Rights, in the book, my book, Boundary Boss, one of the Bill of Rights is you have a right to course correct, make mistakes, and change your mind. Because you do. So much of the time we're so afraid of making a mistake, and that keeps us inside the box. But think about who created the box. Like, I have no interest in living inside a small box that someone else created. I just don't in my life. And really, when you think about it, I doubt that you do either. It's about being more independent in our thinking. So moving into what can we do when you have decisions to make, when you're trying to problem solve, if you're unhappy in your career like I was in entertainment, or whatever the thing is that you're trying to shift where you don't feel satisfied, you have to question the status quo of how everything is done. They would, if you look at entertainment, people would say you have to start early. If you haven't made it by 40, it's never happening. If you didn't go to Yale, and get your fine arts masters, there are so many rules that are such bullshit in entertainment. And then you hear all the stories of people from Danny DeVito to every other famous person you've ever heard of, amazing stories of how they got kicked out of their acting school because their teacher thought they sucked. I think that was trying to think of who was that story about. Dustin Hoffman, I think. But anyway, the point is, we can either dial into the negativity of the possibilities of what we can create in our life because other people couldn't do it, or we can decide that we will think outside the box and be willing to take whatever that risk is. You have to decide what it is that you want. So yes, we question the status quo, and then we do research, because I didn't just take other people's word for it. There are some people who are thinking outside the box. If you want to get into an acting career or singing career, you want to become a chef, you don't like what you're doing, and you want to change your life, then look for stories of people who have successfully done that, because they're out there. I was just interviewing my friend Kathy Heller. Oh my God, you guys have to listen to that interview. It was so good on this show. She has a podcast that's called Quit Your Day Job instead of Don't Quit Your Day Job. And she was sharing a story about one of her listeners who was basically working in a job. It was like a factory job that he really hated, and he ended up getting fired from the factory job that he really hated anyway. And out of nowhere, he just decides he's going to bake a cheesecake. He's like, I don't know. He wasn't a baker or anything. He just saw something on YouTube that was interesting. He's like, I'm going to give that a go. And then, to be nice, he gave a gift of this cheesecake to the fireman in town. And then suddenly he gets a call a week later, and they're like, hey, can you make 12 of those? Because we want them. They're amazing, and we're going to give them to the other firehouses, or whatever it was. So this was the beginning. Long story short, you want to hear the whole story, listen to my interview with her on the Terri Cole Show. He ends up having this incredibly successful business. She tells it so great in the interview. But again, if this person were thinking inside the box, he'd be like, who am I? I'm not a chef. I didn't go to any kind of baking, cooking school. I don't have the skills. Who am I to think I can do this? Instead, it was just the next right action. Oh, I'm just going to do this. People said, can you make 12? He's like, I can make 12. Okay, I'm going to do this. Literally, next right action, thinking. And he always had like a plan B, or like a safety plan. Like, he said to his wife, all right, we're going to open this little teeny store in town now that everyone wants these cheesecakes, but we'll do it for 2 months. And if we don't make a profit, I will find another job. I'll do something else. To be responsible. So you can think outside the box, be a risk taker, and be responsible in your life. Anyway, that story just totally lit me up. I loved it. Next thing I want you to look at is your blueprint. This can impact you both ways. If you came from a family of risk takers, that may make you a risk taker, or you may be averse to risks because of it. But it's just good information to know. I feel like in my own family, my father sort of thought outside the box when it came to work, and was a risk taker. And my mother was a little bit less of a risk taker and actually stayed home and raised kids, and she really wanted us to make safe choices. She didn't want me to make the same mistakes that she made in her life or that she felt like she made. She didn't want me to get married young. She didn't want me to have kids young. She really wanted me to make my own money, have a career, do my thing, because she didn't do that in her life. She dropped out of college. She got pregnant with my dad. So I think I was impacted by both of them because I do a lot of work to make sure that there is a safety net for any of the choices that I make that are risky, at least now in my more adult life. So I'll give you just a few questions that you can answer, and you already know. Probably think about it. Think about your maternal impactor and your paternal impactor if you had both of them. You know, were they risk takers or not? And the last thing I want to say about this is I want you to dial into what you really want in life and what are you willing to do to get it. Of course, there are things that are outside of our control. So I'm not talking about those things, right? I'm talking about opening your mind to your deepest heart's desire. And instead of just thinking of all the friggin' reasons why it can happen, I want you to start thinking of all the friggin' reasons why it can. Because I so wholeheartedly believe in your capacity to create a life, a career, a romantic situation, a child-rearing situation that thrills you, that fulfills you, because you, without a doubt, deserve that. And what are the things, like one thing for sure, that will help you do all of what we just talked about are better boundaries. So, on that note, I will end this episode by telling you that Boundary Bootcamp is coming. So go to terricole.com/boundary bootcamp if you want to immerse your things in all things healthy, expanded boundaries. That's where you go. terricole.com/boundary bootcamp. I hope to see you on this inside of Boundary Bootcamp. I'm so grateful that you spent a bunch of time with me today. I always appreciate it. As always, take care of you.